Hello and welcome to Grand Prix and the Imola Grand Prix.
Woo-hoo.
It is the first of the European leg, ignoring the fact that there is going to be a Canadian Grand Prix in the middle of that. But we've got the first of a triple header as well. How exciting. So we start off with Imola and then next week we go to Monaco, followed by Spain.
Very exciting.
Now, Imola is the race where we are seeing the C6 tyre compound.
Yes.
Which is the new and softest tyre compound that Pirelli have introduced for this season of F1 in order to try and spice up pit stops a bit and try and create more races with two-stop strategy. So we'll have to see if that works.
Ooh. Also, is it Imola or is it Emilia-Romagna? I'm a bit confused.
Yes.
That's just the answer.
Yeah, I would be remiss to leave out the fact that I don't really understand why it's Emilia-Romagna and also Imola. I do know, however...
Imola's easier to spell.
That's not what I was going to say.
That's why I use Imola on the artwork.
Emilia-Romagna sounds more Italian.
Yeah.
Yes. But I do know some history on Imola, if you'd like to hear it.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Me being legit? That sounded a bit sarcastic.
It wasn't sarcastic.
Oh, was actually legit?
Sounded like when we suggested doing a tyres episode and you were just like, yeah, sounds great.
This time I'm being genuine.
Oh, okay. Okay, fine. Imola first graced the F1 calendar in 1980 and has been an on and off character as it was dropped off the calendar in 2006, only to reappear in 2020 as the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Italy is one of two countries to host more than one race on the current calendar, with the United States holding the top spot with a rather braggadocious 3. Did you like the word braggadocious?
Loved it.
What's that mean?
Like you know how you say like, oh, it's a bit atrocious. It's a bit braggadocious.
Oh,
like a bit
very
braggy.
braggy.
Oh, okay.
Like we're better than you.
But with so many countries desperate to be able to host a race on the calendar and willing to pay top dollar, F1 is exploring options to either remove race locations or put them on a rotation schedule, which we saw with the Belgian Grand Prix. It had its fate sealed as a rotational race with a new contract being handed to Belgium until 2031, but it is going to be missing out on the 2028 and 2020 seasons. Stefano Domenicali, the F1 president, stated, "It will be increasingly difficult to have two races in the same country because interest in F1 is growing and it's a situation we have to deal with in the next coming months." Ironically, Stefano was born in the Imola region, but sentimentality clearly cannot save the race, especially as it's fighting against the historical icon of Monza.
It's also interesting because they obviously have the Barcelona Grand Prix and yet next year they are going to be introducing the Madrid Grand Prix.
Well, that is very true. But clearly...
And we keep letting more American races enter the calendar.
Yes, but they are having a growing market in the US. That's where they want to push their market. That's where they've always wanted to push their market. So I think it's more of a strategic move rather than Stefano Domenicali not liking where he comes from.
So they're trying to make it less European-centric.
I think they're just trying to make it more US-centric.
Well, with that history lesson done, should we get on to Izzy's quali lap?
Ooh.
Oh, golly.
Yeah, that's right. You don't get to put your mic down yet, lovey. You still got some words to say.
I know.
Do you love doing the qualifying?
No, because
recaps?
I always say it, and then at the end, I'm like, what did you think? And you're like, I didn't really get anything from it, but thanks.
Well, yeah, because you rap.
I rap.
Yeah, you don't. You don't speak at a normal pace where someone can understand. It's like Hamilton tries to. Blah, 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 blah.
Brilliant analogy.
But that's exactly what you sound like.
Yeah, but it has to be quick and snappy because I've got to do it in the lap time. So
It's not snappy. It's just quick.
Yeah, but it is snappy because I'm condensing like 45 minutes worth of content into a minute.
But yeah, but you also put a lot of detail.
Girls,
You're welcome.
we're falling apart here. Right, you have 1 minute and 14 seconds to do your quali lap. Are you ready?
Born ready.
Are you steady?
Born steady.
Well then, go!
Q1 and chaos erupted early. Yuki Tsunoda suffered a massive crash, bringing out a red flag. Thankfully, he was okay, but his Red Bull was heavily damaged. Qualifying resumed, and then rookie Franco Colapinto also crashed heavily at Tamburello, triggering another red flag. Amidst the drama, Verstappen topped the session, whilst Lawson, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Behrman and the crashed Tsunoda were eliminated. In Q2, more surprises unfolded as both Ferraris, Leclerc and Hamilton failed to make it into Q3. Williams looked strong with Sainz topping the session. Antonelli, Bortoletto and sideline Colapinto also missed the cut. Aston Martin's gamble to run medium tyres paid off, getting both Alonso and Stroll through. It was a nail-biting shootout shootout for pole position in Q3. McLaren initially looked strong with Piastri and Norris setting the pace. However, Verstappen snatched provisional pole. On the final runs, Piastri pulled out an incredible lap to take pole position by a tiny margin. Russell on the mediums grabbed third with Norris fourth. Alonso and Sainz completed the top 6.
Very nice.
I think I finally managed to get this thing clicking.
Yeah.
Yeah, very smooth, no retakes whatsoever.
Yeah, none.
Why are you doing that? With the power of editing, there was no retakes or anything.
Just to give the listeners some context, we were sitting on a bench outside in the sun watching qualifying this weekend because we were out on...
First we were sat at a table and then you made us move to a bench,
Yeah, 'cause it
and
was
then you made
cold.
us move back to another table.
But I was just cold. But obviously we were out and about because we have lives. And
yet
we
we're watching qualifying, so we don't have much of a
But
life.
we thought it would be a 45-minute qualifying, but
Yeah.
because of the amount of red flags and yellow flags, I think it ended up lasting
Mm.
an hour and 30 minutes.
Yes, close
Yes.
to that.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was long.
And your only way to see yourself through that was by making us relocate. So you
Yes.
had interesting scenery,
Yes.
which was pointless for us, but I'm glad that it made you more interested in the content.
It's called having ADHD, ma'am.
On that note, should we get into the race?
Let's do
Yes.
it.
Well, that was a good race. Why are they considering taking it off the calendar?
I don't know. Talk to Stefano.
Stefano, I'll be in your emails, mate.
Stefano's like, I don't care.
Spam.
I feel like it had the potential to be very boring, but it ended
Cool,
up being
so do
very
you.
entertaining. It ended up being very entertaining.
Yes. So, what are our main talking points from this race? Well, Max Verstappen managed to take the lead on the first lap in an uncharacteristically clean move from him.
Yeah, he did very well. He sped through.
Yeah. And that ultimately got him the win of the race.
Oh shit!
Verstappen's taken the lead!
He's going fast.
I think Max was very clever. I think he knows that the McLaren can hold onto their tyres beautifully. So he needed to scamper away and be able to get that move done early and then be able to build a gap and be able to dominate that race. It's obviously the second win in 2025 for Max Verstappen. But we did have a lot of rumours coming into this race following off the back of Miami, with McLaren dominating this season, as seeing Oscar Piastri emerge as a a favourite for the Drivers' Championship this year. But according to a report in Italy's Auto Sprint, whether or not Christian Horner will be staying within the team
Yes.
apparently will be determined by this weekend's Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Having fallen behind McLaren as F1's leading team, Red Bull introduced a new floor at the Miami Grand Prix before continuing the RB21's evolution at Imola. And the team has changed the side pod arrangement, the rear suspension and the wheel bodywork and the brake ducts. And apparently, if the upgrades didn't work, claims Autosprint, Horner is at risk of losing the support of the Thai shareholding in Red Bull GmbH. I mean, Helmut Marko also came out and spoke to Sky Deutschland and said that's complete nonsense. Someone seems to want to make themselves important. Again, for us, everything remains the same. And Max told Sky Italy, people ask me questions about that, and I'm like, honestly, I don't really know who even puts that into the world. So there was an idea that if these upgrades didn't work, that potentially Christian Horner might have had his job at risk. However, the upgrades do seem to have worked. So it seems as though Christian's safe and Max has had another fingertip clinching onto that Drivers' Championship. He's not letting it go yet.
Yes.
He's not that far from Piastri now.
No, he's not.
Or from Norris.
Yeah. I think 9 points behind Norris now in the Drivers' Championship. So, yeah, he's catching slowly but steadily.
I don't think you can ever discount a Max Verstappen from the pecking order here.
No.
Yes, the McLaren is incredibly quick. However, I don't believe that you can just easily discount Max, because when he does moves like that and he's able to dominate a race, it proves why you want him in your team. So I still think the race is very much on. And it's exciting to see that their upgrades are working. This means that it's not just going to be the two papaya cars are going to be fighting just between themselves. It means that there's going to be another guy coming to the gun battle?
Sure.
The shootout?
Yes, the shootout.
The shootout. The gun battle. Brilliant. Why have I said that?
Well, if they've upgraded their car and that seems to work, what about maybe upgrading their driver again?
Oh.
Helmut Marko has said that Isaac Hadjar is breathing down Yuki Tsunoda's neck, And then we obviously had on lap 17, Yuki Tsunoda being radioed by his engineer, being asked to hold Piastri up because he's obviously racing with Max and trying to catch back up to the start. But then 1 lap later, Piastri's passed with quite some ease. And then on lap 25, Isaac Hadjar, who was in P4, was lapping 1 second slower than Max in his Racing Bull car, and in turn holding up Antonelli, Hamilton and Piastri and helping to build a gap for Max to pit into. So actually Hadjar was the ideal teammate for Max in this race rather than Yuki, who had obviously crashed during qualifying and started from the pit lane. So if the car upgrades are working, maybe a team upgrade would work too.
But I mean, I think Tsunoda, although he had a horrible qualifying, I mean, the crash was awful, seeing him flip in his car, but I think he still did brilliantly for this race. He ended up in 10th. Starting from 20th and going up to 10th is very, very good, I think. I mean, I think Hadjar did amazing. He's been doing very, very well, but I think it's not fair to say that Tsunoda's not doing as well, because I think it was just he had an unfortunate qualifying. But so far, I think he's been doing, considering he's in the second cursed Red Bull seat, he's been doing a pretty good job.
I think it's a difficult one. I think after the Liam Lawson, switch out this year, I'm hesitant to say that I think they should switch from Yuki to Isaac Hadjar. I think what we need to see a bit more of on the grid is people giving drivers a bit more of a chance to bed in and to be able to get a chance to have a feel for the team, understand the car, have a decent amount of mileage and testing, understand how the tyres work on that car, understand different tracks. So I think Isaac Hadjar is doing brilliantly, but I think personally, he's at the minute in the best place that he could be, which is he's still being able to have the pressure off. The pressure's still on, but not the same level of pressure that you get from Red Bull, my lord. So I feel like he's best placed where he is right now, and he can continue to get that confidence build up, because as we saw with Lawson after he got swapped out, the main issue that drivers suffer when they get dejected from a seat, especially a Red Bull seat, is their confidence goes. Yeah. And I think currently Isaac has got a lot of confidence driving around that all of these different tracks and different circuits. So although it's very tempting to say, like, he's doing good, put him in the Red Bull seat, but he's still a junior, still a rookie. If he continues on the trajectory he's on in the future, hell yes, Isaac Hadjar deserves a chance at a senior seat. But currently, I think he's in the best position to be able to have a career that continues on a positive trajectory compared to being just swapping him in. Oh, let's just change this, swap him in, swap him in, swap him in. Yeah. I think it needs stability.
And I mean, clearly, like with Lawson, when he got switched into the Red Bull Racing team, the races after that where he wasn't scoring that well, I would think he was ending up in like 19th or 20th place. It was very clear that he was in his head about it, because what happened was it felt embarrassing to him and it was hard for him to accept it. But he seems to be doing okay now. Like he got 14th place for this race, which is not too bad. I think we'll definitely be seeing him continue to improve throughout the next races. I don't think they should be switching out Tsunoda.
Well, since we're talking about switching out drivers, I think it seems only appropriate that we talk about Alpine.
Yes, I mean, it's been a wild few weeks for Alpine. So, as everybody, I'm sure, well knows by this point, Franco Colapinto is making his return to the F1 grid, whilst Jack Doohan has been demoted back down to being a reserve driver. And to make matters even more complicated, Ollie Oakes, the team principal for Alpine, has now also resigned. So, at the end of August 2024, Williams announced that their academy driver and then F2 driver Colapinto would compete for the remainder of the 2024 season with their team, replacing Logan Sargent as Alex Albon's teammate. Williams' signing of Carlos Sainz meant that Colapinto was left without a full-time seat for 2025 and swapped to Alpine as reserve. But just after 6 races as Alpine reserve driver, Colapinto has now been signed to an initial 5-race deal with his position set to be reviewed ahead of the British Grand Prix at Silverstone in early July. In a statement confirming the driver swap, Alpine announced that Doohan remains an integral part of the team and will be the first-choice reserve driver during Colapinto's stint for the second seat. Now, as I'm sure we're all remembering, Flavio Briatore, who did tell Jack Doohan, "I own every inch of you," I'm not sure he cares to own as much of him now that he's not sitting in his seat.
So I'm not sure if it's legal for him to say that. It seems like there might be some HR issues there.
It's not legal, it's definitely creepy, Rhian. But Flavio Briatore's come out and said, Franco will race as much as needed. I read somewhere that he'll have 5 races, but no, there's no set limit. He needs to be fast, not crash, brackets, yikes, and score points. I'm only asking him these 3 things. If he does them well, he will drive forever.
Well, unfortunately for him, in the Imola Grand Prix, he was not fast. He did crash during qualifying, and he did not score points.
I would argue, though, that those 3 things he's asking for are some of the most sought-after things in Formula One, and they're quite hard to get.
Especially in an Alpine.
Exactly. Especially with a rookie that has been doing lots of simulator work and test runs, but hasn't been doing race runs in the actual car. It's easy, isn't it? You make it a flat 2-dimensional story of like the new guy that, is been switched out from Jack Doohan now crashes. Oh my God, he's rubbish. He's still getting up to speed with the car.
Yeah.
It was a mistake. It was a rookie error, as we call it, as a saying.
And we also saw Yuki Tsunoda, who's been in F1 for years, do a very similar thing.
Exactly. But it all adds to the storyline of like, oh, Jack Doohan's out, he crashed a lot, and now, oh, Franco Colapinto's done it, but just let him simmer, because when he came in 2024, he did put on some really impressive performances. Yes, he did crash a little bit, but he didn't crash as much as Logan Sargent, the guy he replaced, so we sort of, we kind of forgave him that.
It balances out. Yeah.
But there was mumblings at the Miami Grand Prix that the team were considering changing up their driver lineup and that this could be Jack's last performance in the car. Jack Doohan then had a lap 1 incident with Liam Lawson and was out of the race. Flavio Briatore apparently told him soon after he hopped out of the car that he would have to sit out and that he would be benched for 5 races whilst they gave Colapinto a chance to prove himself.
I mean, it doesn't seem like a very supportive work environment.
Very savage.
Yeah, very toxic.
Yeah.
It is very savage and it is very cutthroat, the fact that they've gotten rid of Jack and they've swapped in Colapinto for, however many races. We'll see how many more crashes he does. And that might determine when he gets out of his bloody contract. However, it's not a good time for Alpine. They are currently sitting 9th in the Constructors' Championship. Yeah. And if you remember, this came off the back of them fighting very hard to win 6th in their Constructors' Championship in 2024. And all of those points have been scored by Pierre Gasly. And we obviously now know that Ollie Oakes has now also left the team. Yes. So it's been a wild few weeks for Oliver Oakes. At the start of the Miami Grand Prix weekend, Ollie Oakes' brother, William, was arrested with a large amount of money and was charged with transferring criminal property. There's no indication that Oakes was involved in any of the actions leading to his brother's arrest. However, Oliver Oakes did opt to resign from his role as team principal for Alpine, and he travelled to Dubai directly from Miami while initial tensions were solved. Following on from the Miami Grand Prix, Alpine have announced the team principal Oliver Oakes has resigned from the squad with immediate effect. Ollie Oakes joined Alpine in July 2024. He was a former racing driver who saw the team lift themselves to 6th in the team championship. A team statement released on Tuesday said, BWT Alpine Formula One team announces that Oliver Oakes has resigned from his role as team principal. The team has accepted his resignation with immediate effect, and as of today, Flavio Briatore will continue as executive advisor and will also be covering the duties previously performed by Oliver Oakes. The team would like to thank Oliver for his efforts since he joined last summer. But since then, Oliver Oakes has been spotted in the paddock, just not the F1 paddock.
Oh.
He is actually in Imola and he'll continue to serve as director of high-tech GP. As such, Ollie Oakes will be in the Formula 2 and Formula 3 paddock because their high-tech GP is owned by his family. So he is still in the motorsport space, but he is not in the F1 space currently.
And there were also lots of rumours around the whole Christian Horner sacking that Oakes would be a potential replacement for Horner.
Very interesting. I mean, there's also a name of Franz Tost, who used to be it was AlphaTauri, now Racing Bulls team principal, and it was rumoured that he decided to go and step down for own personal reasons and stuff, but actually there's murmurings and rumours that it was because of a disagreement that he had with Christian Horner. So if Christian Horner was to leave, he wouldn't have any disagreements, because there'd be no disagreements he had, because he would no longer be in this team. Why am I longing this out? I think the main issue for Alpine is that I feel like they are
in a state of flux.
Constantly. I think that the appointment of Oliver Oakes, it felt like they were moving in the right direction. It felt like they had a team principal. They were sort of starting to see a vision there.
And then Flavio Briatore just added a bit of toxic waste to it.
Yeah, but I mean, 10 months later, it's yet another team principal that is out. And as you say, Flavio Briatore is, he's been already in the sport many years before. And he's got a very old school way of running a team. But I feel like they need stability. And with driver swap-ins and personnel changes and facelifts of the brand left, right and centre, I feel like the one thing they're missing when it comes to other things like Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari all have targets that they plan to achieve to win titles. And midfield teams like Williams and Aston Martin and Haas have clear planned upward trajectories. And even obviously Sauber have plans for the future going into Audi. But I think with Alpine, you get a sense there's not much planning at all. So I don't know what's going on with Alpine. I hope that Franco Colapinto can get himself into being a regular point scorer. But currently, it just adds to that sort of narrative that Alpine are a team that are constantly struggling to find one direction and one direction they're going to stick to.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. But that is the current situation.
Was Flavio Briatore working on the team in the last season?
Yes, he was like an executive advisor last year.
But not as big of a role as he has now.
Well, this is the difficult thing. I think that it's Oliver Oakes has been in the role as team principal last season and this season, but he joined in August 2024. But Flavio Briatore was coming on as an executive advisor, which lots of the teams have. They have that, in different areas. But the idea is that they will lend their hand and expertise to certain conversations and things. But I think Flavio Briatore is just a very big character. And I think in a team where they need direction, he certainly will give them one. So Flavio and Ollie were both very quick to say that they both had a very good working relationship and a lot of respect. So I think that it felt like you had Ollie Oakes that was steering the ship, and you have Flavio that was saying, where we're going.
What direction,
yeah. So it felt like it was more of a partnership than maybe we saw from Netflix, but there was definitely more harmony than there currently is now, because now there's just feels slightly lopsided. So we'll have to see how the rest of their development process and going into 2026, how Alpine fare. But currently they need to start scoring points to get themselves anywhere. That's the first problem they've got.
Yeah, start thinking about strategy rather than switching drivers.
Yeah. Exactly that.
Now, remember in the intro when I said that Pirelli had introduced its softest tyre compound in the hopes of a two-stop race? Well, we got it.
We did.
It worked very well.
It very much did.
We got a two-stop race. We also got a two safety car race. Well, one virtual safety car and one full safety car. That lended itself very nicely to those two stops, actually. Timing worked out very, very well for some drivers. We had, of course, Charles Leclerc expressing during the first virtual safety car that he was the unluckiest driver ever when it comes to safety cars. But the first safety car obviously came with Ocon having a bit of a mechanical issue with his car and pulling over on the side. And the second one, I know we were very heartbroken to see home hero Kimi Antonelli with all of his school friends in the crowd watching on.
Oh, God, yeah, of course.
Had to retire from the race, his first retirement in F1.
He didn't have a good weekend.
He didn't
qualify very well, and then for him to retire in the race is just not great.
Qualifying, of course, everybody has a bit of a rubbish qualifying here and there. However, at least it wasn't that he crashed out.
Yeah.
He did a silly mistake. It was something that was out beyond his control. So he can still leave his head held high, but I'm sure for him will be heartbreaking that he couldn't have turned that, maybe not the result he would have wanted in qualifying, he couldn't have turned that around and have a bit of a comeback drive for him. But I still think this young talent is here to stay for a very long time in the sport. So I'm sure he'll have many, well, maybe he won't because Imola might not be here, but he'll have many a fun home race at Monza.
So, question. Why was it that there was a virtual safety car for Ocon, now that I know it's not COVID related?
Brilliant.
And why did they deploy an actual safety car for Antonelli? Because watching it seemed like they had basically the same issue where their engines basically died.
So that all comes down to where they've pulled up on the track.
Okay.
So the virtual safety car is deployed if they basically just need the cars to slow down, whereas a full safety car is deployed if they need all of the cars to bunch up together, usually if they are going to have a recovery vehicle on the track, which we saw with Kimi Antonelli's car. So essentially, Ocon managed to park his car in a convenient enough position that they were able to get it down like a little side road and move it quite quickly, whereas Antonelli's car needed to be taken out by a recovery vehicle, which meant that they needed all of the cars to be driving slowly and all together, so then there was lots of time where the track would be empty with no cars going down it for them to work on removing his car.
Okay.
So it's a safety thing. It's basically how much time do we actually need to do this, and how much of a clear track do we need? How much space do we need to do it as well?
That makes sense.
But as we said in a previous episode when we were discussing these sort of safety regulations and stuff like that, obviously there was at some point in time a rule around not having any cars on track while there are recovery vehicles. But yet again, we saw that this race. So I don't personally think it's the safest way to do it. I think the safest way would be to just red flag it. But I guess maybe they now just do it in terms of, you know, if it's a wet race maybe and there's low visibility, then we wouldn't have it. But yeah.
I have another question about safety cars.
Okay.
Just because watching this race with the second safety car and all of the cars having to go behind it and obviously like pulling them together, have there been any complaints about it not being very fair for the drivers, where Max, for example, built a big gap between him and Norris? I think it was Norris behind him, either Norris or Piastri. And I think it was around 14 seconds before the safety car. And then when the safety car was deployed, that immediately got shortened and they have to do it all over again. Is that very fair for the drivers? Like, would that not be more of a risk to their position?
Did you listen in our tyres episode when we went over safety cars and virtual safety cars?
Ish.
Oh.
I mean, the point is that it's not about the sporting side of it, it's about the safety side of it.
Yeah.
So there's been no complaints about it because the drivers recognise that it's being done for their own safety. So yes, of course, Max would love to retain his 14-second lead, and if there was a virtual safety car, he would have remained his delta and probably would have kept, you know, a 14-second lead, because everyone would be reducing their speed by the same amount, so the gaps would still be pretty incremental as they were before. With a full safety car, you're bunching all those cars up for the fact that there's something on the road or the track that needs to be done where all of them are moving at one point around the track, so there's time for them to be able to sort out marshal-wise whatever they need to sort out. So it would be incredibly pointless for Max to be radioing in saying, well, what are you going to do about my lead? Because the point is that's the protocol. It's done for safety. It's at their own advantage to follow it for their safety, so they don't complain about it.
I
Right.
get that it's safety related, but my point is, if he had such a big lead and then say that Piastri was able to get past him as soon as they were allowed to restart again, it just doesn't seem fair, because if it was a situation where there wasn't any safety car, then that wouldn't have happened, or that would have taken ages to happen. It would have taken, you know, Piastri getting a lot faster and catching up to Max for that to happen. So I don't know. I feel like
Every Lewis Hamilton fan wants you to go and watch the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix right now.
I get the point, but I mean, to finish first you must finish. You have to get to the line first. Like, so it's safety car restarts are a gamble, and that's the excitement for the fans and for the sport, is that when you go racing after a safety car, you don't know if the car in second or any place will be able to make a big lunge to the first corner and go ahead. But that's just the nature of the sport. It's not really, you can't jeopardize safety for fairness, you know.
Yeah.
Oh no, he had a 14-second. It's just redundant. It means the safety needs to come first over it. But also, it's a fun element of the sport when the safety car
It adds
restarts happen.
entertainment, for
Exactly.
sure.
Because if it was needed for a virtual safety car, then that's what they'll do. But they can't compromise and say, well, it was pretty exciting with Max having such a dominant lead, we'll just do a virtual safety car when we need to do a full safety car. They can't do that. It needs to be what is needed for that situation to make sure everyone on track and all the marshals are all safe themselves.
Which is why the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix was such a controversial thing, because there was a very similar crash that had happened in, I think, one of either the practice sessions or the qualifying session. You'll have to forgive me, it was 4 fucking years ago. And for that crash, they red flagged the session. Whereas for the actual race, the at the time race director, Michael Massey, said, because it was this, showdown in the desert, both going in on equal points, he very controversially said, we are not going to red flag this race. Which is why it was like such a big deal, because it was just like, you are putting entertainment over safety. And that is outrageous, and that should not be allowed. For a near identical situation in a different session, you red flagged it, but for this, because you want it to be this big, spectacular entertainment sport, you have compromised safety. So ultimately, fairness doesn't matter, entertainment doesn't matter, who you want to win the race doesn't matter. Safety is key. Safety is what comes first.
That's fair.
No, it's not. It's not fair.
Safety is key.
But it might not be fair.
Yeah, that's
Can you hear that noise in the background? Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, it's the Waitrose truck reversing.
No, it's not. Thank you for your contribution. Can you hear that car in the back? No, not a car, for God's sake. Can you hear that noise in the distance? Beep, beep, beep. Girls, can you hear it?
Yeah.
Dean's sister coming up as kids.
Why do you hate fun?
I said yeah.
Yes.
Well, it seems that the FIA have beeped their way into a reversal of the swearing ban.
Well, hey, fuck.
The FIA sure has been busy in the week of off racing, and on Thursday they released an Appendix B with their sporting code stating swearing will now be seen in 2 different lights depending on if it's a controlled or uncontrolled environment. The FIA introduced this rather harsh rule in January, only to downgrade it this week in order to avoid any further backlash from drivers. Controlled environments will now include settings such as press conferences, and uncontrolled environments refer to spontaneous comments made by drivers or teams when they're on track. The base maximum penalty has also been reduced by 10k euros down to 5k euros. The FIA president...
What a bargain.
I know. Yes, your fuck offence has gone from 10k to 5... That sounds horrible. So sorry.
My fuck offence?
Sorry. Sorry.
Please don't talk about that on the podcast.
Sorry. That's awful. Hated that. So sorry. Okay. Don't know how to recover. Just going to keep moving on. The FIA president said, as a former rally driver, I know firsthand the range of emotions that are faced during competition. I've led an extensive and collaborative review with contributions from across the 7 FIA World Championships, FIA member clubs and other motorsport organisations. Enter George Russell, who was one of the most vocal critics of the initial ban.
I love that George Russell is in his Karen era.
I mean, he has to be, but he's been quite full beans with it. He said, I feel the changes should never have happened in the first place. So we're talking about a situation where things have been reverted because it was a little bit ludicrous in the first place. It's a bit of a strange predicament because we've still had no correspondence with anyone from a senior level at the FIA. So it's all a bit suspect.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Always.
When you say George Russell, you do mean Mercedes driver
Yeah.
George Russell. Okay. Sometimes I'm confused because I think that... Because you never clarified if it's like someone else who's named George Russell or... if it's Mercedes.
Why would that
George
need
Russell.
clarifying?
I don't know, because I'm like, that's quite an authoritative position, or like...
He's an F1 driver, though.
Yeah, but...
He's basically in charge of the F1 driver union.
Oh. I mean, I thought I had a feeling it was him, but I feel like I needed to clarify.
Your very obvious hunch was bang on.
Yeah, but I had to clarify because I needed to stop questioning myself every time that you mentioned him, whether it's Mercedes or someone else named George Russell.
No, it's George Russell from Mercedes.
Okay.
Did you? I don't mean to patronise, but where you were going in on yourself and going on what sounds like quite a mentally exhausting journey and trying to figure out whether it was George Russell from Mercedes or a new George Russell that I just didn't give any context on or really explain who he was. Did you hear anything else or take in anything else of the beep, beep, beep swearing reversal ban?
Swearing bans are reduced from 10k to 5k, and there's something called uncontrolled zones and controlled zones.
Okay, so if you were in an uncontrolled zone, you could say what?
fuck?
And if you're a controlled zone, you could say,
Golly gosh.
Yeah.
boom. You looked so lost.
I was like, what kind of non-swear words can I use? Fudge.
Nice. So I think it's very interesting that all of this is happening because there's been even more
Dun dun dun. Election talk.
It seems as though the new trend of Formula One is bring your dad to work day.
We love to see it.
Because, as we all know, Leclerc this week was unwell. He missed his media duties on Thursday. But Anthony Hamilton is a sickeningly good fit for the new FIA role.
Damn.
Nice. How long did that take you?
Mere minutes. For a change, it's not all Lewis Hamilton this, Lewis Hamilton that. No, Anthony Hamilton is taking the stage for this little moment. And he is set to secure a new role within Formula One's governing body, the FIA. According to Planet F1, Anthony has been working privately alongside the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem over recent months in an advisory position, playing a key role in the FIA's Young Driver Development Pathway, or YDDP. Mr. Hamilton...
Didn't like the sound of that.
Me neither.
Why? Oh, no. Okay, well... I've actually used YDDP quite a few times in this, but I will
Just go with it. Just go with it.
Why don't we want to
Well, you've
now?
said it now.
I'll say the full thing, actually. I don't know. Anyway, Mr. Hamilton is set to appear for the launch of the Young the Young Driver Development Pathway alongside Ben Sulayem in China next month. Many may see this team up as, how you say, random or maybe unlikely. Due to Lewis being a very vocal critic of the current FIA president over recent years, Hamilton even went to the 2025 Australian Grand Prix. What? No.
I did.
Hamilton...
He was racing.
Yes, yes, and whilst he was there, may I add, which was what I was fucking meant to say the first time I said it, he actually said that Ben Sulayem has never had his support. Hamilton remarked that there is a real lack of accountability here within the sport and within the FIA. Now, with that drama aside, now that we know that potentially there could be a little team-up of Mohammed Ben Sulayem and Anthony Hamilton, whilst stage left, Lewis Hamilton isn't particularly happy about this weird team-up. We now have Carlos Sainz Sr. wants to run for the FIA president. So apparently every father along the FIA paddock, come along and we'll find a place for you somewhere in Formula One. So Carlos Sainz Sr. has emerged... When I say Carlos Sainz Sr., I mean the dad of Carlos Sainz, the man that you fancy. Yes, it's not someone else that's also Carlos Sainz that sounds suspiciously like the one that goes for Williams, but actually it's not. It is his dad. Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
completely. Just go over what I said.
She knows her father-in-law's name, don't worry.
Yeah, sorry. Did you know that one because you fancy Sainz so much? You definitely know the difference between the dad and the man.
No, did you not hear me say daddy sides?
No. You're wrong for that, you know it. Carlos Sainz has emerged as a candidate to run against the current FIA president, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, in an upcoming December election this year, but Mohammed isn't going down without a fight, and is reportedly attempting to strengthen his control of the FIA and is trying to make it harder for anyone to oppose him.
With Hamilton allegiances.
So, the BBC has said that they've actually seen a document that shows proposed revisions that would bring the deadline forward for candidates to submit their bid and also give Ben Sulayem the possibility to bar any candidate if he fancies doing so.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry, it's giving Trump.
Yes,
Yeah.
he could basically have the opportunity to say no and veto it, which is wild. The changes will also be voted on at the next meeting of the FI General Assembly held this June. This episode is unfortunately the latest in a long line of controversial incidents involving the current president who took over in 2021. The drama continues for Mohammed Ben Sulayem. One thing I do think is quite iconic about him, he just doubles and doubles down. He hears someone's going to run for presidency and he's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm going to veto it. So
It's giving that scene with Ross, Phoebe and Rachel where they were giving their children's names and they were just kept going veto, veto, and Phoebe was just like, is anyone else thinking veto sounds like a good name?
You just called her Phoebo.
Also a good name.
Also a good name. Girls, I read for quite a lot. Could someone give me an opinion? It's not about
I didn't know
FIBO.
if you were done. You kept having
I'm
research.
done.
Oh my God,
done.
remember FIBO in Amsterdam?
Oh, bitch. Nav, focus, please.
Sorry.
The FIA.
I don't think it's random at all. Like
I never said it was.
What,
You
the team
said-
up between Anthony and... Well, I think it's quite random. I would be quite pissed off if a family member was suddenly pairing up with someone that I had openly said I have absolutely no support for. It's like, excuse me, where's family loyalty?
But I mean, if they're planning to have any input at all within the FIA and actually do things that serve the drivers well, it makes sense to have the fathers of the drivers be there because they can speak on behalf of them, because they're not getting to a point where they're getting actual drivers to be on the board. So if anything, yes, Anthony Hamilton teaming up with Mohammed bin Sulayem, like, yeah, okay, it is weird, could be seen as a betrayal to Lewis, but at the same time I think it actually serves Lewis very well, serves all of the drivers very well, because he's going to be in there inside the room saying, no, this is not going to be good to the drivers.
But I
Change
would
the rules.
argue that someone who is also trying to veto certain candidates and stuff like that has absolutely no good intentions for any of the drivers or the sport. He only has good intentions for his own reputation.
Yeah, but I think
Sorry, no. He's in charge of the YDDP.
What?
The why? He's in charge of the young driver development pathway. He's not in there saying like, and by the way, I want you to pay Lewis more. He's in there trying to make
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I'm not saying being biased towards Lewis.
He's in the way trying to make a pathway for young drivers, like the young cutie Isaac Hadjar, or the rough but ready kind of cutesy guy Liam Lawson. He's not there to be like, I want this all to change. He's creating a collaborative environment where they can create more fun racing for young rookie drivers.
But isn't there a saying where it says befriend your enemies?
What are you? This is Game of Thrones. What are you talking about?
Do you mean keep your friends close and your enemies close?
Not one. Not one. Not my first language.
Befriend your enemies.
That would be the shittest advice ever if that's what your friend told you.
If you get to tell, it's not my first language. But but yes, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And I think that's the case here. I think it's
No, no. What a stupid thing to say. No, no. He's coming to work and make the sport better. He's coming to help and to advise and to work alongside the FIA to get more young development driver programs and schemes in. He's helping develop a scheme. This isn't a scheme. He's working on a scheme.
yes,
But
he
it
said
makes
he's working
Mohammed
with-
Ben Sulayem look good. He's not doing it because he actually cares, realistically. He's doing it because he's got an election coming up and he needs to be shown to be trying to improve and progress the sport in some way. It's like whenever there's a general election going on and all of the MPs and shit are coming out saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. You know, all of these presidents and candidates and whatnot, they make all of these promises because they're trying to look as good as possible. But you know, all of these good schemes and incentives and shit that he's got working on one side is actually just going to be masking the fact that behind the scenes, he's trying to create rules where he's allowed to say, no, Carlos Sainz Sr. can't apply to be president. No, this person can't apply to be president, because actually he doesn't want to lose the presidency himself.
I think it's all very cynical. I think you telling him to befriend his enemies, you saying that it's all a naysaying nonsense. I am a bit shocked that Anthony Hamilton's doing this, it must be said. However, Anthony Hamilton had to work 2 or 3 jobs to be able to fund Lewis's dream of getting into Formula One. He worked tirelessly for many, many years, so he knows firsthand how hard it can be, especially as a black man trying to get his black son into the sport. Mm-hmm. It's very, very difficult. So for that sense, he's a very ruthless, competitive man, and he managed to get his son to the top, and he's got, you know, all these wonderful records. So from that, he does seem to know a lot of people around the paddock, so he might be a positive influence. I still did find it a bit random.
Yeah.
However, I have faith in the young driver development pathway scheme. I have literally no idea what it's about, but I think it sounds good. And I like
agree.
the idea of, and we saw Anthony Hamilton embracing Isaac Hadjar after his, heartbreaking crash early on in the Australian Grand Prix this year. So he seems like he's a caring man, but admittedly, he is teaming up with a rather controversial figure who multiple senior figures have resigned from the FIA, whilst the chair of Motorsport UK, David Richards, wrote a letter that was rather damning against Mohammed Ben Sulayem, and Richards said that the FIA has progressively worsened under Ben Sulayem, and the final straw was being asked to sign a new confidentiality agreement that I regarded as a gagging order.
That's what I mean. It's like, I just... there's putting in all of these good schemes and stuff like that, but there's also realising that you are dancing with the devil in doing so. And, you could just set it up on your own. You don't have to partner up with the FIA. Do it on your own, because then you know that you're doing it with good intentions and you're doing it as part of an organisation that also meets those good intentions and the ethics that you are setting it out with. I don't know that Mohammed Ben Sulayem's FIA is that place.
Well, only time will tell. What I think would be a pretty cool double bubble team up would be Carlos Sainz Sr. and Anthony Hamilton.
That I would like to see.
That would be interesting.
Lewis, chat to your boy.
Yeah, if it's bring your dad to work day, get them all involved. Let them all have a nice moment. Because, clearly there's no other people that are really scrambling to go and get themselves against Mohammed Ben Sulayem, because he has so much power at the minute that people are seeming like it's a little bit nerve-wracking to even go up against him.
Wasn't Susie Wolff going to be running as well?
There was talks that maybe she would go forward, but we haven't heard anything further from that.
Okay.
That would be pretty badass.
Toto Wolff's wife.
She's also head of the F1 Academy.
The Tifosi were out at the track, ready to watch those red cars go vroom vroom past, super duper fast, and were utterly disappointed on Saturday.
Yes.
While we were watching qualifying, we were sitting and we were asking each other what our predictions were for Q2, or I think we were asking where do we think Ferrari is going to end up. And when it came to Hamilton, you guys were saying what, 6th, 7th place?
I think Iz said 8th, and I said that's mean, 7th.
Yeah, and I said I think he's going to be out in Q2, and then I just sounded pessimistic, and you know what happened? He was out in Q2, and so was Leclerc, and so was Antonelli.
Yes.
The 3 Italians. No. 2 members of an Italian team and 1 Italian all out in Q2. But Ferrari did make up for it in the race.
Yeah, they really did. And it was a bit of a nail-biter as well, because we thought we were going to see Miami Part 2, because Ferrari once again split their tyre strategies across both of their drivers, with Charles Leclerc starting the race on the medium tyres and Lewis Hamilton starting on the hards. And on the first lap of the race, Leclerc managed to make up 1 place while Hamilton lost a place. And then on lap 7, Leclerc said the tyres are better than expected on his medium tyres. But then, rather surprisingly, on lap 11, he pits off of his medium tyres and moves on to the hard tyres. Lewis, obviously being on hard tyres, is then going long. We then had on lap 29 the virtual safety car for Ocon's breakdown, which saw Lewis Hamilton then pitting, which meant that after pit stops were all said and done, Hamilton was in P7 and Leclerc was in P10 after starting ahead of Lewis Hamilton.
We would like to add that Ocon's breakdown was his car broke down. He didn't have just a moment where he started crying.
I mean, he might have had one.
Well, it was
right
under
after.
the visor, and I think he probably would have carried on racing with the tears if he could, because he wants to win points.
Well, someone who did have a breakdown at the time was Charles Leclerc over his radio, who said, Can I help you, girls?
No, sorry, you power through.
Who said, unbelievable. Every time I get fucked by the virtual safety car. Now, we would like to point out that this is an uncontrolled zone and he is perfectly within his right to say this.
Well, actually, currently you're in a controlled zone, so that's 5k, please.
So then we have, obviously, Leclerc now on the hard tyres and Lewis on the medium tyres, and we think, ooh, are we going to get Miami Part 2? Because on lap 41 Leclerc passed Hadjar and moved up into P6, where Lewis was in P5 on the softer tyre. So Leclerc on lap 45 was 1.3 seconds behind Hamilton and was therefore going to be all up in that dirty air of his and potentially ruining his tyres with it. We speculated and speculated about whether or not the call would come. We pondered as to whether Lewis would volunteer to switch positions as he did in China, or if he would stay quiet, feeling like he was not appropriately repaid in Miami. But ultimately, on lap 40, the safety car comes out because of Antonelli's breakdown, again, of his car, not his mental health, although understandably, if it is his mental health as well, given it was his home race. And the restart order then was Leclerc in 4th position and Hamilton in 7th. However, then with some speedy, drivey moves and Leclerc not...
Sorry, just to clarify to the viewers, that was speedy, drivey moves.
Yes, with some speedy, drivey moves from Lewis Hamilton, who was able to pit and get on fresher tyres, and Leclerc not having any tyres that were young enough for him to be able to really challenge for better positions. We then saw, of course, Lewis Hamilton moving up to P4, his best Grand Prix finish as a Ferrari driver, and Leclerc, unfortunately, falling back.
Yeah, I mean, it was meant to be a very special weekend for Ferrari, especially for Lewis Hamilton, as it was the first time that he would have an outing in front of the Tifosi as a Ferrari driver. But it looked as though the team might struggle to be able to give the fans anything to be able to cheer about after qualifying, as Charles and Lewis were both out in Q2 and they were in P11 and P12. However, it felt as though the Ferrari outfit were out for a recovery drive of the day, and they were able to make up ground. It seemed their race trim was a lot better than their qualifying trim. However, qualifying does seem to be a bit of a handful for those two. I'd argue that Charles Leclerc is able to extract more out of the cars and get more performance than Lewis is. The virtual safety car and the safety car gods did seem to shine on Lewis more than Leclerc. I can understand his frustration, but them be the rules, bitch. Sometimes it just happens for you and sometimes it doesn't. I can't help feeling that Lewis might sometimes sit on a plane, stare out the window and just think, why couldn't there be a sprint race? Because that does seem to be his Ferrari speciality.
Well, I just can't help but notice that these Ferrari cars seem to do better in the second half of the race. They need to be on lighter fuel for them to actually be able to move up places. Otherwise, they are just stuck.
That's true. On higher fuel, but also their rear suspension and tyres just seem to squeal and not be very happy. I think we're still following that trend of the fact that since their just double disqualification in China, they've had to have the car higher up, and as a result, they don't feel they're extracting the performance. However, two very strong recovery drives from the pair of them. They are not where they want to be. Last year, they were fighting with McLaren for P2 in the Constructors. This year, they're in P4, trailing behind Red Bull. So not where they want to be whatsoever. They desperately need to have some upgrades being brought because there is still a deficit in performance. But with all things said, I think both a very strong race, to be fair.
Yeah, and Lewis Hamilton has since come out on his Instagram and said, with a collage of photos, P12 to P4 with a nice little explosion emoji. Still more work to do, but really felt more at one with the car today. Great teamwork, pit stops and strategy too, so definitely a result we can build on. Massive thanks to the fans. The Tifosi support is so unreal. Grazie a tutti.
That means thank you, Tutti.
Didn't know you spoke Italian.
I do, yeah. Tutti is very important in Ferrari.
And Charles Leclerc's, well, the first line of his is in Italian, but luckily he puts the English translation underneath.
Why don't you just read the Italian, as I know Italian?
Okay. Tifosi, grazie di tutti. Oh no, he said grazie di tutto. I wonder what the difference is.
You're getting stuck on one thing.
Si ho provato fino alla fine, si vediamo a Monaco. Heart.
So that means unlucky day, but I've tried it all. Next is Monaco. Thank you for all the support. And most importantly, thank you, Tutti.
I didn't know that you were so fluent in Italian.
Yeah, I am. Let me just close Instagram. I mean... Yes, I mean... What can we say about Ferrari? We've been sold a dream in red, and instead we're in hell, and it's red. So I don't know. It's really not the trend of performance that we would be after. How much of their resources then switch over to 2026? We hear that they are behind on their 2026 project, which is terrible because they're already behind on their 2025 performance, so it's not feeling great. But then they have these flashes of moments where you think, ooh, the car looks good, they're overtaking, but it's always when the car is lighter and it's towards the end of a race where they can't make the same race-long impact on the rest of the field.
Yeah.
So they are still slightly behind where they should be. However, with a day like this where they're both seeming more positive, overtaking was meant to be incredibly difficult.
No drama on the radio.
No drama on the radio that we heard of.
Well, slightly annoyed messages from Leclerc, but...
Oh, he's just whining.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, that wasn't down to strategy. That was just down to the circumstances
Poor
of
luck.
the races. Yeah. What can you do? They're not out of the woods yet with their performance. That must be said.
Well, since you mentioned the promise of a dream of better days coming and then quickly plunging to hell, should we talk about Aston Martin real quick? Because their qualifying was brilliant.
Sensational, I would say.
And for the race, again, we have both drivers out of the points. Alonso on race 7, still on nil point. Had to say that because it was Eurovision this week.
I loved it.
And what happened, Aston Martin?
Yes, I mean, Aston Martin, in 2023, if you remember, we saw a huge upturn of performance from them. They seemed to really understand the regulations. They seemed to innovate in the right ways. Their car was looking incredibly strong.
Alonso was feeling rejuvenated.
He was. I mean, I've also always said this. The Aston Martin car is so sexy.
It's so sexy.
It's such a beautiful car.
Reem Loki has Aston Martin nails.
Yes, I do.
Yes, she does.
I've got emerald green nails on right now.
Yes, and they're very nice. And I think the Aston Martin car has never performed as sexily as the car looks. No. So when it does perform, weirdly, I'm almost like, yes, make the car drive and look how sexy it is, the way it should do. But they brought upgrades to this car. I mean, a lot of people have been saying and suspecting that they've just not decided to upgrade or develop this year. They've decided to switch on to 2026. We haven't seen Adrian Newey very much recently, and I'm sure that's because they've just locked him inside the factory to allow him just work on that 2026
He has a bed,
car.
so it's humane.
Yes, and he texts his wife once a month, so it's fine. But I think that these upgrades they've brought seem to have done the trick. It was very exciting. I mean, as well, I mean, it exacerbated someone like Ferrari's problem, for example, because it meant there was 2 more cars that were more competitive than them. However, for Aston Martin, they are not doing the best, currently. So Aston Martin are currently 7th in the constructors' standings with 14 points, all of which have come from Lance Stroll. So these upgrades were needed, and it was nice to see Alonso and Stroll invigorated. But it did seem, unfortunately, in their race trim, they seemed to go backwards in the race. Yeah. So there's still work to do. But in this cost cap era, the fact that they've brought upgrades to the track and they seem to have had a positive impact on their performance is still a huge step for them. So even though they may not have scored points and they probably might have been a bit frustrated with how their race panned out, I still think it's a step in the right direction because they haven't been scoring a huge amount of points, and they have 6 points ahead up in P6 is Haas with 20 points.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of points to be finding this season, and if they could get themselves up the constructors ladder, that would really help their 2026 chances.
Well, maybe Monaco will break the curse for Alonso because, as we've seen in basically every Monaco Grand Prix, it's all about where you qualify.
Yes.
And if he's able to qualify in that top 10, maybe he will finally be able to score some points.
I don't feel that Alonso really deserves to have no points this season.
Yeah.
Because he's really struggled with the car, but he's a fabulous driver. So I have no doubt that the points will come this year. It's just a matter of when they will come. So you're right. Monaco could be a great chance for him. If the qualifying trim is looking good, then he's known to be able to create, be the cork in a bottle around Monaco. He did that a few years ago with his car.
Yeah.
Was able to aggravate quite a few drivers behind him by being able to manage the pace and be able to make his car as wide as a
bus.
Atta girl. So let's see if he can do that again. But it'd be nice to see Aston Martin getting some points because I still feel that they're going to be very competitive in the near future.
Yeah.
There's potential.
There is. Huge amounts. Well, Max Verstappen was able to scamper past Oscar Piastri on lap 1 and was able to dominate the race thereafter. But what constructor does Max Verstappen come from?
Red Bull.
What constructor does Oscar Piastri come from?
McLaren.
Exactly. You're intrigued.
I don't know where this is going. They're basic facts.
I was going into a spiel.
Oh.
Please, don't interrupt my spiel. McLaren's incredible time management continues to baffle people up and down the paddock, with numerous attempts already made by their rivals to get to the bottom of just how the fuck they're able to regulate their rear temperatures so brilliantly during a race. Red Bull have been all over this topic and have been accusing McLaren of introducing water into their tyre inflation gases, which Zak Brown then recently poked fun at by labelling his drinks bottle as tyre water at the Miami Grand Prix. I actually thought that was actually very fun and playful, and it made me like Zak Brown even more than I already do. But when this first came to the attention of the FIA, they were happy that nothing dodgy was going on at McLaren and that the regulations were robust enough to prevent teams trying anything dodgy. So, if it wasn't water-filled tyres, then what the fuck is it? That is the golden question. Now, I bet you're wondering, is there something that I can offer? And there is. Well, third-party thermal images of the brakes at McLaren during a pit stop in the Japanese Grand Prix reveal that the rear brakes on the MCL39, the McLaren, were much cooler than its rivals. This made the FIA take a look at the McLaren's rear brake design to ensure it complied with the regulations after the Miami Grand Prix, which it did. But there is someone with a new theory. It's a former employee that worked with McLaren Advanced Technologies. So, there's a Donny called Martin Buchan, who is a motorsports engineer and has a background with Audi and Force India, which later became Racing Point and was rudely dubbed Tracing Point in 2020.
Accurately.
Rudely. Well, he went on to establish his own motorsport consultancy company and worked with McLaren Advanced Technologies and carried out research on something called phase change materials. During this time, Martin wrote his thesis, because he's well-brainy, on innovation cooling techniques, which happened to be on the use of materials for use with cooling high-voltage batteries, which they use in Formula E, with the research seeming to have crossover into other areas of cooling. Now, F1 teams have a right ball ache trying to balance their brakes, and they need cooling systems to keep the brakes at the optimal temperature. They want to keep them hot enough to be able to give them the proper bite of performance, but not getting so hot that they overheat. They also don't want that overheating to then transfer onto the rims of the tyres. Now, back to Martin, who's that clever Donny. His theory is that the use of phase-changing materials is a shielded channel between the brake linings and the inner workings of the brakes that will transfer from a solid to a liquid when a certain temperature is reached, but the temperature doesn't get any higher as a result of it changing from a solid. The material used would determine the point at which the temperature stops rising, with the temperature of the brake drum triggering the phase change, perhaps explaining why the advantage is not as big in qualifying as it is over a longer distance. Then the brakes cool down again and the material re-solidifies by the time the car is back in parc fermé. Now, Reem, I'm sure that to you that sounded like wop, 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 brakes.
I actually want Reem to try and explain that in her own words, because while you were reading from your script, I watched her turn her head to the side, yawn, look back at you, and widen her eyes trying to keep them open.
Oh, that's really rude.
I was trying to keep up. There's a lot of words.
Go on, explain it in your own words.
But usually she reads something out and then breaks it down for me, and I was waiting for the breakdown.
You give the breakdown.
I don't want to do that.
Try.
So, there was a guy that used to work in McLaren.
Yes, Reem, yes.
And he now has a motorsports agency. Consultancy. And he wrote a thesis. He's well brainy on that.
Thank you.
And he wrote a thesis.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about how drivers struggle to keep the cooling on their brakes.
Is that all you got?
Yeah.
Okay, well, luckily for you, I've got a translation for Reem.
Thank you. That's what I was waiting for.
Because that, with no judgment, was horse shit. So, imagine Sabrina Carpenter is getting ready for a big concert, like an F1 race. She wears her signature bedazzled leotard, but it's secretly made with magic fabric that only melts when the stage lights get really hot. During a short rehearsal, like qualifying, the stage lights come on, but they don't get that hot, so Sabrina stays cool and the magic fabric stays solid. No big deal. But during the full concert, like a long race, the lights get blazing hot. When that happens, her outfit's magic fabric melts slightly, not in a bad way, but in a way that absorbs all the extra heat, keeping her comfortable so she can keep singing and dancing like the iconic queen that she is. The melting fabric prevents her from overheating, just like the phase-changing materials keep the brakes from getting too hot. And after the concert, when the lights go off and everything cools down, the fabric goes back to normal, ready to wear for the next show, just like the brake material solidifies again in parc fermé.
Okay.
Regurgitate it back to me.
Okay. So Sabrina Carpenter
In the context of Formula One.
The material on the brakes absorbs the heat, so it cools down in long races, but it doesn't do that in qualifying, but then after the race it comes back.
The theory is essentially that the material changes state. So when it is hot, it melts and turns to a liquid, and when it is cool, it is a solid. So during qualifying, it's not getting hot enough to melt and turn into that liquid, but during a race, it gets hot enough, turns to the liquid then makes it cool down, so then it turns back into a solid.
See, I explained that.
You did not explain that whatsoever.
I said the material goes away.
You said goes away. Yeah.
I meant melt.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's not proven, but that is a theory that's come out about how McLaren are able to keep their brake temperatures cooler and be able to have better tyre management, because that residual heat isn't then going onto their tyres and then overheating them.
Allegedly.
It's not proven, but that is the latest theory on maybe less head scratching for people in the paddock to be able to generate the same idea. But the development of that idea, if it even is the theory, might be incredibly difficult to do so. But very interesting theory. And if that is the case, very fucking cool innovation.
Very fucking cool. And it wouldn't be illegal because it's not something that the FIA would have thought to have made illegal, similarly to the DAS.
Yes, but also the FIA did check over Oscar Piastri's car and they found nothing. They took no issue with anything to do with their rear brakes or anything to do with that. So currently, even if that was the case, they seem to be in the clear.
Yes.
But I just think that it's quite an interesting theory that comes out, because if that is the case, then they seem to have hacked the system hugely.
Yeah.
And it seems to be benefiting them and currently legal. So head scratching still happening, but potentially less head scratching if that does become a confirmed theory.
So girls, shall we move on to Ream's recap?
Let's frickin' do it.
Yes.
Kimi Antonelli out at home race.
Antonelli broke many hearts this weekend, many Italian hearts, as he crashed out in the race and also had a horrible qualifying. But the fans, especially the Italian fans, are still rooting for him.
Esteban Ocon also retires and pulls out the VFC.
Haas needs to get their shit together.
Right, brilliant. Ferrari comeback story.
Ferrari had a great recovery this weekend after a horrible qualifying, but they managed to score some points, with Lewis ending up in P4 and Charles Leclerc ending up in P6, and they seem to be back on track and feeling better in the cars with no drama.
It's a double points finish for Williams.
My man.
And your man's dad is potentially going to be the FIA president?
Daddy Signs, potential next FIA president. I'll be watching.
Oh,
Ew,
creepy.
Keep your eyes away. Anthony Hamilton gets a sickening new role.
Anthony Hamilton signs a controversial partnership with current FIA President Mohammed bin Sulayem. There are mixed responses about it, with me being okay with it and the rest of you being very much against it. But Anthony Hamilton does have a chance of doing some good for very young drivers. No,
Why
not
did he
very
pee?
young.
Why did he pee?
Stop it.
Phase changing materials at McLaren. Theory.
McLaren has allegedly come out with a very cool innovation about how they could cool their brakes. And so far it seems legal, and it also hasn't been caught by any of the FIA people. So we are waiting to see any updates on the matter. But so far it seems to be working, allegedly.
Pirelli's soft tyre compound is debuted and pulls out a two-stop race.
A two-stop race made for a very exciting race, and the fans were glued to their seats, including all of us, and the drivers seemed to take advantage of it, especially with the safety cars, so it was definitely one worth watching.
Max Verstappen takes his second victory, as updates at Red Bull mean that Christian Horner will keep his job potentially ?
Verstappen has a great start to the Imola Grand Prix with a clean overtake of Piastri in lap 1 and then continuing to lead the race and winning it eventually, which puts him back in the fight for the championship and potentially keeps Christian Horner's job.
All right. That was a good recap.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
Very proud of you. Done very well.
Right. There's only one last segment to go.
The Grand Prix Podium. Just had to one-up me there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Amazing sound
I did.
effect. No need for that.
Right, well. I have a decent idea of who I'm putting in all of my positions.
Pause.
Yeah, that was wild.
Well, then you start.
Oh, okay.
Who's your prick?
My prick for the race is actually rather controversially going to be Fernando Alonso.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
how come?
Because I was very hopeful and ultimately he just wasn't able to score a point. And I really thought this race was going to be the one where he scored that point, especially after a great qualifying.
That's fair. I
Fair
think
enough.
mine is also a bit controversial because it might be too soon,
Oh.
but I think my prick of the week is going to be Franco Colapinto,
Oh.
which I know that he's new and I know that he's a rookie and he gets to make mistakes, but at the same time, when you compare him with Kimi Antonelli, for example, who's also a rookie and who's just 18 years old and he's done amazing, I feel like you could have done better.
But
was
he's a
lot of
rookie
potential.
in such a better car.
That is very true. But I don't know. I feel like maybe not the crash because Tsunoda also had the crash during qualifying, but he also made some silly mistakes during the race. So I don't know. I expected a bit more, especially for a driver that's replacing Jack Doohan. So for me, he's my prick of the week.
I get it, to be
unfortunately.
fair. Last year when he replaced Logan Sargent, he came out and he was on fire in
Yeah.
his first few races. So I guess maybe there was a bit of an expectation to maybe see some more of that in him, and he just didn't bring that.
I was going to also have Franco Colapinto as my prick for the week.
Well.
The reason that it's not the fact that he didn't score points this race weekend, I think it's more that he's sort of the butt of a bad joke because he already came into being a reserve driver and Jack Doohan was placed under a huge amount of scrutiny about whether he was going to be able to keep that seat. Colapinto, whilst in the opposite corner, was heralded as this amazing driver that people, really sought after. And he's come in and he's been expected to perform at a very high level. And unfortunately, the first thing he did was bottle it. And whilst I'm not saying that he's, lacking in talent or drive or anything else, I think that he's a prick because he's in a bit of a bad position currently. He's got all the eyes on him. And unfortunately, the first outing we saw was a crash. And I think it shows the cutthroat nature of Formula One, but I think that Franco Colapinto might be in a bit of a bind. And for this week, I think Flavio Briatore may also be calling him a prick.
All right, fair enough. Well, that cements that then, I guess. And Reem, who are you going to put as grand?
It's between doing.
It is not between doing Lewis and someone else. What's wrong with you?
It's between choosing Lewis Hamilton for grand or the Ferrari team, like Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, because I think they both did a very great job during the race. They had a shit qualifying, and I expected a lot more from them, but the recovery during the race was brilliant, and I think they deserve grand.
Oh, okay. I was going to say for my grand, Alex Albon.
Ooh.
Because as usual, he does a wonderful job during qualifying and managed to get himself in to Q3 and ultimately landed himself P7 for the start of the race. Yes, there were safety cars and virtual safety cars, but he was holding off some of the front runners that you would expect to be able to overtake him with ease. And, there was a time in the race where he was, maybe thinking that he could be going for a podium or P4. And I thought he managed to keep a cool head and drive very, very well. So I would like to see him as grand.
I keep copying both of you. I was going to go for Alex Albon as well.
Copycat!
Okay, so I think that whilst Carlos Sainz is really starting to get his head around this Williams car and also the Williams team, I think that the Williams outfit have been at the bottom of the championships in many seasons, unable to score any points. They are currently in a comfortable 5th in the standings, and I'd say that the top of the midfield pack, and they are gelling as a team. And Alex Albon, with his experience of that car, has been able to lead development and direction with James Vowles at the helm and Carlos Sainz now really coming into his own. I think that their race result shows what is going on behind the scenes and off track is translating beautifully on track. So they are a quarter of the way through the season, and they're doing beautifully. And I think Alex is really driving beautifully.
Yeah.
So he's doing justice to that car and he's extracting the maximum and putting pressure on Ferrari, for example.
Yeah.
So I think that he deserves grand.
Well, so that we can make sure that there is no copying for our Grand Prix. Yes, is I'm looking at you there. Yes, little Miss Copycat.
Rude.
I would like all of us to say who we would be putting as our grand at the same time.
Bear
So
with me, I need to think.
have a little
I need
think
to visualise.
and let me know when you're ready to go. All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
3, 2, 1.
Max
Verstappen.
Verstappen.
Oh, okay.
Oh, what the fuck?
We all agree.
This might be the most consensus we've ever come to on a Grand Prix podium.
I agree. I don't think you can question it really for this race. I think the same as we saw in Japan, where he just dominated that race. I think when Max is comfortable in the car and everything's working for him, he's just able to just crank up another notch of performance. And I think that he was very smart to get that early pass on Piastri. I think that was absolutely crucial to his race, because I think he knows that if he didn't get past, Piastri would just keep extending and extending and extending that lead. So keeping him behind him in dirty air, being able to navigate safety car restarts beautifully, I think he just nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, he completely caught the McLarens sleeping
Yeah.
when the safety car restart happened. He went around the corner and then just zoomed off, and they both ended up, fighting with each other instead.
He's fantastic at safety car
really
restarts.
is.
So I think it played beautifully into his hands. But I've said it before, yes, Piastri is becoming, starting to become the championship contender here, and he is currently the championship leader. But you should never, ever, ever discount out the fight of Max Verstappen, because it's an almighty fight he's able to conjure up.
Well, there you have it. Our prick for this week is Franco Colapinto. Our grand for the week is Alex Albon. And our grand prick is Max Verstappen.
I'm very happy with that podium.
Same.
That's all we've got time for here on the Grand Prix podcast. But never fear, you shouldn't be sad that we've got to Monaco, because next week we've got Monaco.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. But you didn't hear it, but I actually made Nav stop doing the outro so I could say that. This is the first year that we'll be coming around to Monaco where they have mandated 2 pit stops, whereas before it was a free-for-all and normally would be a rather dull one-stop race.
Yeah.
But that is no more. We're adding entertainment and excitement to this race. So,
Well, we're not.
well, make us part of the community.
Oh, okay, yeah, we are.
Yeah, here at Formula One, we're always adding strategy and excitement to the race. So,
I don't think we can claim that we're associated with Formula One.
okay. We're,
Here in the Formula One fandom.
here in the Formula One fandom, we're always adding excitement and just whatever. Okay, it doesn't work. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Please follow us on social media to keep up to date with all the things that we're posting, because we post very cool stuff and we're trying very, very hard to just be nice and do something nice and just follow us. So you can do it on X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
That's it.
That's it. And please leave us a review, because no one did last time and I asked last time. So if you could leave a review, we'll see if it helps. If it doesn't, we'll stop asking. But until someone does it, we're going to have to keep asking. So just leave a
this
positive
is
review.
just an experiment at this time to see if you're actually listening at this point of the episode.
Exactly.
Right, is it time to go?
Yeah.
Is it time to Monaco?
Don't steal my joke.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Okay, ladies, rev up your engines. It's time to Monaco.